Hello, everyone. This is Doug Nelson, the president of BodyWork Associates here in Champaign. And first, I want to thank you all for the wonderful comments that you sent to me after posting the first video, which is great. And so I thought I would kind of embellish that by expanding on stress and the quote, quote, body mind. And again, I hope you find this valuable in dealing with the COVID-19 stress that we're all under. So, this idea of the intersection of body and mind, even saying that seems like a bit of an irony, because the more we understand the science, there really isn't a difference between the body, the mind. Sorry, Rene Descartes, the emerging science has been a little different than that. So, and what we have come to understand is this idea of bidirectionality. When I first got into the field of massage therapy, that was 1977, there was the beginnings of this understanding of how you think really does affect how you feel, the effect of emotions and thought patterns on physical functioning. And that gave rise really to a whole lot of academic pursuits even that responded to this. As it turns out, however, that how you feel also affects how you think. So the other direction is also true. And that is a little more, I want to say in one way, a little more of a recent phenomena, although people from the past have explored this and posited that, but now the science is really catching up to it. And that's what I thought I'd share with you a little bit, because it's really quite fascinating, actually. And some of that early science, here we go again, came from none other than the University of Illinois here in Champaign-Urbana. And it was a really interesting study that was done, as you see pictures of this kind of thing, where they were told to hold a pen in between their teeth and not let it touch their lips, which is really like a forced smile. And then in the other one, you see with pursed lips. So what it gave rise to is something called the facial feedback hypothesis, which, again, this wasn't the first idea of this, but it was a really cool research study exploring this. And it turns out, if you keep a smile to your face, that you actually test happier and you will perceive things as being from that lens. And if you have a kind of a frown on your face for 5 minutes, you adopt that posture and your brain starts to see life through that lens, which is really kind of fascinating. So if I go back to my earlier slide about academic pursuits and all of this, turns out with this slide, perhaps your mother was right. So, that, okay, you're going to put a smile on your face and you're going to act like you like this. And if you don't, well, we've all heard lines like that. And, well, it turns out there's a little bit of truth to this. And so what does that mean for us? Well, here's, another example of this. fMRIs are studies of blood flow in the brain. And if you look at an fMRI of somebody who is going through a great deal of physical pain, and you look at an fMRI of someone who is going through a great deal of emotional pain, they look remarkably similar. Scientists probably could tell the difference, but it wouldn't be easy. And that's because both emotional stress and physical pain light up the same area, which is this right anterior cingulate cortex. So again, if both things happen, if both things are processed in the same area, you get a spillover effect. So it's well known, for instance, that people who are depressed also present with physical symptoms. Right? There's a physical posture that goes with depression. And it's also known that if you have physical pain, if you do something that's just great for yourself emotionally, your physical pain also lessens. So in the bad thing, both things are processed in the same area. On the good side of the equation, if you have one, you can actually affect it by doing the other. So if you have physical pain, do something really great for yourself, but emotional, whether it's a connection with somebody else or whatever makes you feel fulfilled, is a really good thing and will spill over into the physical world. And if you are struggling emotionally, if you do something great for yourself physically, you'll have a spillover effect in that direction. So this little scientific fact also provides us with a strategy that we can use in our everyday life. In the reverse, our daughter Natalie, when she was in New York for 5 years, she was doing improv. She's the funny one in the family. My wife and I are pretty much the material. But when she came back to Illinois, she was opening her business. And one of the things that she did to earn some money was she would go to Springfield once a year, and she would do trainings for first responders. And because of her background in acting and improv, all she had to do was pretend that she was, for instance, a woman who had been sexually assaulted. And because of her acting background, she could do that in a very convincing way. And the other scenarios that they laid out for her, they would give her some traumatic scenario, and she just had to be that person while the first responders learned how to deal with it. Well, she did that for a couple of years. The money was really good. And then she just stopped, because once she would do that, it was, I forget how many days it was, but she would come back. She would always get really sick afterwards, because as it turns out, acting like that for days at a time, your body actually, because it was so real, her body perceived that she went through a tremendous amount of stress, and then it would weaken her immune system, and then she'd get sick, and then like she'd earn a bunch of money and then come back and then not be able to work for, 5 days because she was sick. So it kind of canceled itself out. So it's so interesting. What a great example of this. Researchers at Ohio State. Yeah, I'm gonna actually address Ohio State here. So they did a really interesting research thing that if you engaged in memory tasks and kind of brain challenges, it actually upped your immune system. But if you just sat there and passively watched some really violent movie, guess what? What you see in the screen, in some way you're internalizing because your immune system went down. So that's a bit of a cautionary note. Now that we're all stuck at home, be careful, what you're watching and what you're viewing. So, and another takeaway lesson, there has been so much about our physical presentation affecting how we think. So one of the things is, just getting out and greeting the world. There's a wonderful TED Talk. I don't remember this person who did it, but I think it'll be easily available. And, one of the suggestions that she made, and I've certainly done this before I have, spoken before really large audiences, if they're, it's intimidating if there are several thousand people in the audience, before you walk out, just to kind of open your chest and adopt the posture of kind of greeting the world. So in a world now where we're all stuck at home and this social distancing thing, whenever the weather allows, today isn't a great day for that, but to get outside and just greet the world and spread your arms wide and adopt that posture of taking on the world, it's a really good thing. In some ways, that will be internalized in a really, really cool way. So the thing I find most interesting about all the science of all of this is that the more deeply you understand the process, the more it gives you opportunities, strategies to deal with it, whether it's stress or pain in general. And that was really kind of the premise of my book, The Mystery of Pain, that the more deeply you understand it, the more power you have to address it. So I hope in some way that this, for stress as well, gives you some ideas about strategies that you can use. So as always, during this time where we're all in shelter at home order, be well, be safe. From all of us at BodyWork Associates, we miss you, and we're anxious for that day when we can all be back in the clinic and do the work that we love. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. I hope you found it valuable. Thanks, everyone.